right, welcome to the second episode of Change My Mind. A lot of news to get into. Today was NFL cut day, so rosters are officially down to 53 players. A lot of big names being released, a lot of little names being released, just as important. And it's really going to shape up the NFL. Ben Simmons, his situation in Philly is escalating. He is looking like a trade is looming. Deshaun Watson news, he looks like he might be on the move to potentially Miami. And a lot of interesting quotes coming out of the NFL today definitely need to be discussed. But let's start off with the big news. The Patriots today made their decision about the quarterback for the season, not just naming Mac Jones the starter, but absolutely committing to him for the rest of the season. They released Cam Newton this morning. He's off the team. He's now a free agent. And they just completely turned the reins over to Mac Jones. And at first, I, like everybody else, was a bit confused. Why on earth would the Patriots cut Cam Newton? Why not leave him on as a backup, help mentor Mac Jones? And I've heard a lot of people saying they did it out of courtesy to Cam Newton because they respected him and wanted him to be able to make his choice. But I know Bill Belichick's smarter than that. He's not the type of guy to just let someone go out of the goodness of his heart. This is the hooded evil genius, the evil mastermind, the Emperor Palpatine of the NFL. This is Bill Belichick. He does not do anything without thinking it completely through. And if I'm Bill Belichick, why on earth would I cut Cam Newton when I'm turning the team over to a young QB? It's because of one thing. He saw what happened with the Dolphins last year. It was disastrous because they had a similar situation. They had an experienced veteran, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and they had a rookie quarterback who everyone was waiting on, Tua Tagovailoa. So all season, when Fitzpatrick would struggle, the fans would be calling for Tua. And when Tua would struggle, the fans would be calling for Ryan Fitzpatrick. And not only is that not good for the team's confidence and the team's morale in the locker room, it's not good for the young QBs. If you're young and your first games in the NFL are you struggle a bit and then you're benched, what's that going to do to your confidence? All of a sudden, Tua wasn't playing well the rest of the season. Shocker. If I knew that at any moment I slipped up, somebody else was going to come steal my job, I would be a bit on edge too. So I'm not surprised whatsoever that Bill Belichick cut Cam Newton because he knows it's the best thing to do for Mac Jones' confidence and the best thing to do for the rest of their season. Because the Patriots are an interesting team. I talked about this yesterday. They have essentially no offense because their offensive line is good. It's always going to be good. That's fundamental stuff, which is where Belichick excels at as a coach. But then if you look at the skill positions, the tight ends, receivers, and running backs, there's not a lot there. And you're giving a rookie not a lot of help offensively and telling him to go make stuff happen, and it's not good for him. But luckily for Mac Jones, he's in a situation where he doesn't have to make big plays. He has to take what the defense gives him, do little stuff by little stuff, and lead scoring drives and win through defense. And that's exactly what Bill Belichick wants. He doesn't want a 6'5", 230-pound quarterback running through the defense. That's not what he's made of. That's not what we saw from him and Tom Brady the last 20 years. Cam Newton doesn't fit that system. That's why they had a losing record last year. Not just because it wasn't a good roster, but because the quarterback didn't fit. And Bill Belichick isn't good enough as a coach, as great as he is, to make that kind of schematic difference work. So what can we expect from Mac Jones and the Patriots this year? I would expect another losing season. This team, like I just said, isn't good. They have an okay defense, but we're getting news now. Stephon Gilmore is going to be out the first 6 weeks of the season. That secondary is taking a hit. Mac Jones is a rookie quarterback with no good skill positions. Think about that for a second. This is the quarterback of your future, and you haven't given him anybody to throw to or anybody to hand the ball off to. What's that going to do for him this year? What's it going to do when his numbers aren't great and people are ranking him as the worst quarterback out of this draft class? So that's what's going to shake his confidence, not just having, a backup quarterback. So I would expect the Patriots to – there's a 17th game this year. I'd expect them to be about the same as last year. They finished 7-9. This year I'd expect 8-9 because there's an extra game. So they'll win one more, still going to be a losing record, and it's just going to further prove what we all know. Folks, the Patriots dynasty was never about Bill Belichick. It was never the Patriot way. It was the Tom Brady way. And the longer Bill Belichick goes without having Tom Brady as his QB, the more we're going to see it. Because when you have Mac Jones, who's not experienced enough to make guys like Kendrick Bourne a great receiver, he's not experienced enough to elevate that kind of play like Tom Brady was. And when you have someone like Mac Jones, who's young and inexperienced, he's not going to be able to elevate the offense the same way Tom Brady could. The Patriots aren't going to be good until Belichick realizes that you can't just win games the old-fashioned way. You can't win games 17-14 every week. You have to be able to outscore your opponents sometimes. And even if things do work out for the Patriots and they win 10 games or 9 games this year and they make the playoffs, they're out in the first round. They don't have that kind of team to make a deep playoff run. And in my opinion, not that kind of team to make the playoffs at all. So that's the Mac Jones side of it. Now let's talk about Cam Newton, because he was arguably the greatest Panther of all time. And now, just 5 years later, he is a free agent once again. It's sad. Cam Newton was one of everyone's favorite players. He was handing the ball to kids after scoring touchdowns. It was beautiful to see. And now Superman has been slain. Cam Newton's a free agent again. So let's talk about the options for Cam Newton to go to. In my opinion, the third best option for him is the Dallas Cowboys. There are rumors of him going there. He would be a backup quarterback for Dak, and Dak has already had injury issues this season. So if Dak goes down and you put Cam in a situation with 3 elite receivers, a good running back, and a good O-line, that's a situation where Cam could thrive in and potentially get his career restarted. So if I'm Cam Newton, the Dallas Cowboys are something I'm looking at, just a 1-year deal, similar to what Jameis Winston did with the Saints, where he wanted to go prove himself. Look where he is now. He's starting QB. So if I'm Cam Newton, I'm looking at Dallas. That's one option. In my opinion, the second best option is the Houston Texans. The Texans are an interesting one for Cam because he would walk in there and be the starting QB. It's probably one of the only spots in the league where he would really walk in and be a guaranteed starter, because Cam he can easily beat out a guy like Tyrod Taylor or something for the first spot. He's talented enough to do that. It's just he would be on such a bad team that it would hurt his financial status for next year. Because if he goes to Houston and stinks it up, because Houston sucks. They're a bad football team all around. They don't have a single good attribute about them. And if Cam Newton walks in there and loses 13 or 14 games, no one's going to sign him. And that's not what I want for Cam. But he gets to be a starter. He gets to play his game the way he wants. And it's better than being a backup. So it's the second best option. Now, the number one option is, I think, the only other team in the league where he can really walk in and be a starter. And that's the Denver Broncos. And I think that would be such a good fit for Cam Newton. Because think about it this way. You have enough weapons. You have Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, who both have incredible talent as receivers. Noah Fant is a great tight end. He's super athletic. And the running game isn't too shabby either. That defense, I'm going to say it right now, that is a Super Bowl caliber defense. And if you have an elite offense, that's a Super Bowl caliber defense for sure. And I don't know if Cam Newton brings the kind of dynamics to that offense to really elevate them to the next level, but he's going to look good. If you put Cam Newton in there over a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, Cam Newton's going to look good. He's going to have a bunch of yards. He's going to win a bunch of games. And in a tough division, he's going to have chances to outshine guys like Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes. And if he goes in there and plays great, not only can he get a second contract with Denver, he can get a new contract with a team that actually wants him. And that's huge for Cam Newton. So I would look at Denver if his agent can get him there. So that's the Cam Newton news. Really depressing to hear what happened with him. But he's not the only big name on the move in the sports world. Ben Simmons has been a looming name in the NBA for quite a while, after he had what is possibly one of the most disappointing and disastrous playoff performances we have ever seen from a player. Ben Simmons is about to be traded. There are reports saying it's not a matter of if he's traded, rather than when, because Ben Simmons is going to be on the move, folks. He's not playing a game for the 76ers this year. And the sooner we get to the NBA season, the sooner he's going to be traded. He made a statement this weekend. He said the teams he wanted to go to were the Lakers, the Warriors, and the Clippers. So let's talk about that. Which of those 3 teams would be the best fit for him? The Lakers aren't trading for Ben Simmons. He wouldn't fit. You already have Russell Westbrook, who's a ball-dominant guard. You have LeBron James, who's a ball-dominant forward. And then you've got all these guys coming off the bench. They just signed Rajon Rondo, who's a guard. You don't really need somebody to take the ball up. And their defense is good enough. You don't need Ben Simmons. So as much as Simmons wants to go to the Lakers, it's not going to happen. As for the Clippers, I don't know if that one's happening either, because they need a point guard, but not one who can't shoot. You need a point guard who can shoot if you're competing for a championship. Look at the Clippers this year. Look at the Clippers 2 years ago. You had Kawhi dribbling the ball up, passing it to someone, passing it right back, and everyone just tried to get their own bucket. There was no offense being generated for anybody other than themselves. And Ben Simmons is a point guard, but if you can't space the floor, who cares? If Ben Simmons passes it to a shot maker like Kawhi Leonard, and Ben Simmons is standing in the lane where Kawhi wants to get to, what good does it do? It doesn't do any good. You're going to have defenders waiting for him. So if I'm the Clippers, I'm looking at a point guard who can shoot. They just traded for Eric Bledsoe. He's talented. He's not the guy they really need, though. He's not going to put him over the edge. But Ben Simmons to the Clippers is just flat out unrealistic. So let's talk about the Warriors. And this is, I think, in my opinion, the best option for him to go to. And you look at who Golden State has. What's Ben Simmons' biggest weakness? It's his shooting. He can't make a shot for his life. I don't care if you lock him in the gym for the next 10 years. He's not going to develop a jump shot. That's just how he is. So how can you cancel out that weakness? Surround him with the two greatest shooters of all time. You get Steph Curry on one side, Klay Thompson on the other. All of a sudden, it's not that big of a deal that Simmons can't shoot when you got guys like that. So if you get Ben Simmons to go to Golden State, he's not going to be a point guard. And this is the transition that I've been saying Ben Simmons needs to make for the last season and a half. He needs to be a power forward. Because if you look at Ben Simmons, not as a point guard, but as a power forward who can't shoot, all of a sudden he seems a lot better. There are plenty of big men who can't shoot the ball. And if you look at Ben Simmons in that light of somebody who's just a big man, because he's almost 7 feet tall and he's a defender, he's a rim protector. So if you look at him as a power forward who's going to get on the block and post up and score from down low, now all of a sudden you've got something. That's what Golden State can bring because Steve Kerr knows how to use all-stars. We've seen that from the last decade. So if you pair Ben Simmons with guys like Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, all of a sudden Ben Simmons is going to look very good. He's not going to have as much emphasis on his lack of shooting, and he's going to be able to put the ball in the basket from down low and play his defense and create whatever offense he needs to do, and his weaknesses are going to be canceled out. That's why I like him to Golden State. All right, so Jared Goff had an interesting quote today. He said that every year there are teams who don't make the playoffs. It's true. Every year there aren't teams who didn't make the playoffs the year before who make it this year. So he goes, every year there's a team that didn't make the playoffs the year before that makes it. Why can't that be us? Jared, I have bad news for you. I don't know if you checked Google recently, but you're on the Lions now. The Lions aren't a team that has particularly too much history of success. They haven't won a playoff game in decades. They're one of the most pathetic franchises in all of sports. They are infamously known for wasting talent. Guys like Calvin Johnson, who's one of the most talented wide receivers we've ever seen, he didn't get to the divisional round of the playoffs. He had to retire early because of how absolutely pathetic the Lions management was. If I'm Jared Goff, not only are you not good enough to bring that team to the playoffs, because who do you have? But I would get out of there. The Lions aren't investing in you as your future. You're not the Lions franchise quarterback. And if there's anything we've learned from their past, it's that they are not committed to their players whatsoever. Barry Sanders, they betray. Calvin Johnson, they betrayed. Matthew Stafford, they betrayed. All of these big-name Lions are all of a sudden gone. Jared Goff, you are not the guy to really elevate this football team. That Detroit is not talented enough to make the playoffs. If you can win 7 games, that's accomplishment enough. Set the bar there. Like in Madden, they tell you, what's your goal for a season? How many games do you want to win? Set the bar to 7 games before you talk about the playoffs. Detroit hasn't been to the playoffs in half a decade already. Maybe focus on just 7-10 or even 8-9. Let's not have double-digit losses, but you're not making the playoffs. There is no scenario in which the Lions finish above last in the division. They will be the fourth best team in the division this year. They are not making the playoffs. And to hear him say that, I don't know what I expect him to say because, he's a quarterback of the team. I don't want him to just go out there and be like, we got no shot. We suck. But that's what reality is. And until that sets in for Jared Goff, he's not going to be able to advance his career. So, stat came out. The AFC East, for the first time since the 70s or 80s, has all four starting quarterbacks ages 25 and under. 25 and under for all four starting QBs. Because you got Josh Allen, who's the oldest at 25. You got Tua, who's the second oldest at 23. And then Mac Jones and Zach Wilson are 22. So what does this mean? Because you look at the AFC East, it's been a crappy division for years. Because Tom Brady was by far the best quarterback in that division. He would run over everyone. And now it's interesting because any one of those four could develop. And if all four of those guys start to reach their potential as ball players, it's going to be a scary division. Because if you look at the divisions where you got all good quarterbacks, take the AFC West or the AFC North, the AFC East is going to be very good because the coaches in that division are very good. And if you pair a good quarterback with a good coach, that team becomes very scary. So Josh Allen has already found his coach in Sean McDermott. That's a match made in heaven. They're going to be very good for a long time. We'll see if Brian Flores, the coach of the Dolphins, found his QB in Tua. If it worked out, that's also going to be a very good team for a very long time. And then you got Mac Jones and Zach Wilson for the Patriots and Jets. If I had to bet on one of those guys to be still on the team in the next 10 years, I would take Mac Jones because Bill Belichick knows how to develop those kind of players. The Jets don't. I love Robert Saleh, the Jets coach. I love him. He's great. But the Jets management, whatever it is about that haunted organization, is not enough to put a team over the edge. Zach Wilson's not going to be on the team in the next 5 years. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. It's not his fault. I think if he were drafted to another good team, he probably would still be in the league. And he could be very talented, but it's not going to work with the Jets. It's just not. The team's not good enough. The organization isn't mature enough. And Zach Wilson isn't the right fit for this kind of roster. So he's young, and he could develop, and that division could be scary. But if I had to bet on it, only Josh Allen and maybe Tua are going to be the elite QBs there. And it's going to take a long time to prove me right or wrong because these guys are young. We haven't seen something like this in a long time. These guys are going to develop, and they're going to develop, and I'm not going to know if this take is right or wrong for another 4 or 5 years. So I guess I'll see you then. So there was an infamous play in the NFC Championship game of this past season where Aaron Rodgers on 3rd and goal from the 7-yard line took off running to the right side of the field, had a lane to the end zone where he could have ran in and had a chance to tie the game with a 2-point conversion. And instead, he went cross-body and threw it to a contested Davante Adams. It was incomplete. Packers kick a field goal. Tom Brady ends the game, and that's all she wrote. There was a lot of people, including myself, who criticized Rodgers for not just tucking the ball down and running to the end zone as fast as he could. Because Rodgers isn't slow. Rodgers is a fast guy. He can easily get to the end zone. Or so I thought. Because Devin White, the Bucs linebacker, had other ideas. He said today that he was sure he would have been able to catch Rodgers if he took off running. So Rodgers had to throw the ball. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I wouldn't put it past him. Because Devin White is one of the fastest guys in the league. He's one of the best linebackers in the league. So let's run with this narrative for a second that Aaron Rodgers takes off running and then gets caught by Devin White, like he says. So Rodgers goes, probably gets taken down to the 3 or 4 yard line, maybe the 2, by Devin White, and now all of a sudden, everything's different. Because Matt LaFleur is not kicking a field goal on 4th and 2. He's just not. So if you give Rodgers another chance, who knows? What if he scores? What if the Packers score and tie the game? Would it have mattered? No. No, it wouldn't have mattered. Tom Brady is still going to go down the field and score a touchdown to win the game. It doesn't matter what Aaron Rodgers does. You can't beat the GOAT like that. And even if he took off running like I thought he could have, it's not that different in the long run. Because if Devin White catches him, or if he doesn't, the Bucks still win that game. All right. We got one more segment for you. It's going to be something fun to end it off. And it's based on this quote that Giants left tackle or right tackle Andrew Thomas said today. He said that he knows that there's, quote, definitely a ton of pressure on the Giants offensive line to perform better than they did in the preseason. And they got to protect Daniel Jones. He knows there's pressure. So let's play a game. I think it's fun. It's called Hot Seat or Concrete, where we talk about guys on the Giants, my favorite team, and whether or not they're on the hot seat or if their job is concrete and they're safe. So let's start with the man who said the quote himself, Andrew Thomas. Is he on the hot seat or is his job in concrete? He's on the hot seat. If I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, he is on a 10. His seat is on fire. He was the first left tackle off the board last year, the first offensive lineman drafted, and he turned out to be the worst out of all of them. There were 4 major guys people were looking at, and he was the first one taken, and he's the worst out of the 4. And it sucks for me as a Giants fan, but it definitely sucks for Andrew Thomas, because if he doesn't perform the way this year, he's gone. He's not going to be the starter, or at least he's going to be harshly criticized, because the way he ended last year was solid, but the way he played most of the year wasn't that good. So if I'm the Giants and I'm looking at our offensive line struggles and we just drafted an offensive lineman, he's got to be the guy to blame, because the only thing that's going to hold the Giants back this year, other than their quarterback, is the O-line. Speaking of the quarterback, let's talk about Daniel Jones. Hot seat or concrete? I'm going with hot seat again. And that one I feel even more confident about, because this is Daniel Jones' last chance. This is his last chance to prove himself as a starting QB, because he was very good his rookie year, showed a lot of promise and a lot of potential, and he was really bad last year. He had more turnovers than touchdowns again. He cost a lot of games. He cost a lot of drives, ended them with turnovers, and probably could have gotten the Giants into the playoffs if he was just a little bit better. So Daniel Jones is on the hot seat. His seat is scorching, because he's just going to be cut from the team next year. If he's not good, he's going to be cut or traded. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see it as soon as this trade deadline. If the Giants start 1-3, 1-4, and Daniel Jones isn't playing well, the Giants might be the one to sign Cam Newton. And now all of a sudden there's a quarterback change in New York. So Daniel Jones definitely on the hot seat. Next up, let's go with Saquon Barkley. Hot seat or concrete? I'm going with concrete, but I don't feel too good about it. Saquon Barkley is going to be the Giants running back. The only thing that's not set in concrete about his job is his contract. Whether or not the Giants decide to give him the big contract, it comes down to how he plays this year. If Saquon's average, they'll sign him to a small contract and he'll be back. If he's really good, we'll sign him to a big contract and he'll be back. And if he gets hurt again, who knows? But you can't play for injuries. So I'm going to say his job is concrete. He's easily the starting starting running back the rest of the season, as long as he's healthy. And the only thing that's hot about his seat is how much money he's going to be making at the end of the year. And I hope he makes a lot, because that would mean he played really well for my team. Next up, let's talk about Jabril Peppers, Giants safety. I want to say concrete. He's one of the most talented safeties in the league. He's one of the best young second defensive backs in the league. And for God knows why, the Giants management thinks he's on the hot seat. They're yet to extend him, and I don't understand. I'm having flashbacks to what happened with Landon Collins a few years ago, the Giants safety, who made the Pro Bowl, had an exceptional year, and the Giants didn't offer him a contract at all. They didn't even call him, and he left the organization. So I don't want that to be how we handle the Jabril Peppers situation. I want a contract for him soon, because he's very talented, and his job should be in concrete. All right, last one. Let's talk about Dave Gettleman, Giants GM. His seat is the hottest out of all of them. Because if you think Daniel Jones is on the hot seat, Gettleman's the guy who drafted Daniel Jones. If you think Andrew Thomas is on the hot seat, Gettleman's the guy who drafted Andrew Thomas. The guy who put all of these players in a situation to possibly fail is Dave Gettleman. And if his decisions don't work out, if his roster moves this offseason don't work out, he is going to be gone very quickly. And he's not the type of guy where people are going to have a hard time saying goodbye, Like, when Tom Coughlin left the Giants, it was tough because everyone loved Tom Coughlin. Giants fans, I don't know why, but they just don't like Dave Gettleman as a person. He has an annoying personality. He's obnoxious and stuck up. I guess I do know why. He's annoying. He's obnoxious. He's stuck up about his decisions. He thinks he knows better than everyone. And he's just made bad move after bad move. He traded up into the first round a couple years ago to draft a cornerback who was immediately arrested. He had a bad season, and then he was arrested for armed robbery, DeAndre Baker. He drafted a running back second overall, which felt right at the time, but now he's got injury concerns. He drafted a quarterback sixth, who hasn't panned out yet, and he drafted the worst tackle out of all of them. And then, in my opinion, the biggest fluke was this past draft. Because you look at what the Giants needed. Everyone and their mothers knew that the Giants needed offensive line. And we sat there with the 20th pick, and we took another receiver. We could have had that lineman from Minnesota, Christian Darrisaw. And instead, we took a gadget player, Kadarius Toney, who I like, but he doesn't fit the need. And now all of a sudden, we just traded for 2 offensive linemen in the last 3 hours. The Giants did. And we could have drafted one. Our problems could have been easier. And it's because of Dave Gettleman that they're not. So his seat is definitely the hottest. So the Giants are in for an interesting year this year. I'm excited for sports to come back. The NFL is back next week. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of news tomorrow. And see you around, everyone. That's our show.